You never expect betrayal to wear glitter. But mine did. It came tucked inside a handmade birthday card, hidden in the back of a desk drawer I wasn't supposed to open. The kind with glued-on stars, crooked handwriting, and too much effort for someone I didn't know existed. That drawer changed everything. But let me start a little earlier. My name is Claire. I'm a mother. A wife. Or at least, I thought I was still a wife when this story began. Julian and I had been married for over a decade, long enough to memorize each other's coffee orders, pet peeves, and silences. We had a daughter, Rose, who was the center of our world. Or so I believed. Julian was always calm, private. He didn't explode, didn't panic, didn't overshare. He just existed with quiet confidence. For years, I saw that as stability. A man who didn't raise his voice, didn't flirt with strangers, didn't disappear on weekends. But now I wonder, maybe I missed the most dangerous trait of all. A man who hides things well. For months, something had been wrong. Not dramatic. Subtle, like a shift in air pressure. He touched me less. Laughed less. He answered questions with half sentences. Some nights, I'd hear him on the phone in the garage, the conversation too quiet to decipher. Still, I ignored the signs. Because we had history. Because Rose adored him. Because denial is easy when the alternative is losing the life you built brick by brick. Then came the drawer. Julian had asked me to find some tax documents while he was at work. Just a mundane chore. But when I opened the bottom drawer of his desk, something caught my eye, a stack of paper held together with a red ribbon. On top was a birthday card. Glittery, lopsided, clearly made by a child. I opened it. Inside, in purple crayon, were the words, "Happy birthday, Daddy. I love you more than ice cream." Signed, Maddie. I froze. Maddie? That wasn't Rose's handwriting. It wasn't her nickname. And I'd never heard her mention a friend with that name. With shaking hands, I untied the ribbon. There were more drawings. Notes. A photograph of a young girl, maybe 6 or 7, with long dark curls and eyes that looked familiar. Eyes I'd stared into for years. And buried beneath them was a letter. Neat handwriting. Adult. Familiar. Amelia. Julian's old friend from college. The one who always lingered too long in conversations. Who sent late-night texts. Who laughed a little too brightly at his jokes. I had always told myself I was imagining things. The letter was dated 2 months ago. Julian, Maddie's dance recital is next Thursday. She keeps asking if her dad will come this time. I told her you were busy, but you need to do better. She's your daughter. You don't get to hide her forever. The words didn't register at first. Daughter? Your daughter? My mouth went dry. I read the letter again. And again. Each sentence slicing deeper than the last. I could barely process what I was holding. Julian had another child. And he had kept her a secret from me for years. My knees gave out. I sat on the floor, surrounded by crayon drawings, broken trust, and a second life I never knew existed. The photos showed a girl with a toothy smile, a child who had Julian's eyes, Julian's dimples, Julian's chin. I felt like I was suffocating. He hadn't cheated once. He had built a parallel world, a child, a connection, an emotional affair that became something much more permanent. He'd stood beside me for years, held our daughter in one arm, while hiding his other daughter from view. And he'd done it so casually, so convincingly. All the times I asked him about Amelia. All the weekends he said he had work trips near her city. All the excuses. All that "you're just overthinking it, Claire." I wasn't overthinking. I was being lied to. And now, I had the proof. I stared at that name, Maddie, as the weight of everything sank in. A daughter. A secret. A betrayal that didn't just crack my marriage, but shattered it completely. That night, Julian came home at 7:36. I remember the exact time because I sat on the couch, staring at the clock, holding that crayon-covered card in my lap like it was a bomb that might explode if I blinked too hard. The house was quiet. Rose was at a sleepover, thank God. I didn't want her anywhere near what was about to happen. When the front door opened and he walked in, coat slung over one arm, phone still in hand, I didn't speak. I just waited. He looked up, confused. "Hey," he said, as if everything was normal. "Did you find the tax folder?" I held up the card. His entire body stilled. Not panicked. Not shocked. Just still. He didn't even pretend. He slowly closed the door behind him and let out a breath. "You weren't supposed to see that." That's what he said. Not, "It's not what it looks like." Not, "Let me explain." Not even, "I'm sorry." Just, "You weren't supposed to see that." Like the crime was in the discovery, not the betrayal. I stood up, fist clenched around the card. She's your daughter. He nodded. Yes. How long? Almost 7 years. I actually laughed. It was bitter. Hollow. The kind of laugh that only escapes when your heart's too broken to cry. So for 7 years, you've been living 2 lives? One with me. One with her. And you thought you could just keep balancing them until, what? I died? You got bored. Julian sat down in the armchair across from me. Like we were having a business meeting. I never planned for this to happen, he said. Amelia and I, we were stupid. It was one night. We both agreed to move on. But then she told me she was pregnant. And she didn't want anything from me, no money, no involvement. At first, I stayed away. I told myself it wasn't my responsibility. But then she sent me a photo of Maddie, and I saw her eyes. I couldn't stay gone after that. So you've been visiting her? Sending money? What, playing happy father while pretending you're just a devoted husband at home? He didn't answer, which told me everything. The rage in me burned so hot I thought I'd combust. Do you understand what you've done? You didn't just cheat, Julian. You built an entire second family and let me walk through our life blindfolded. I didn't mean for it to become this, he said quietly, but it did. And I didn't know how to tell you without destroying everything. You already did, I whispered. You destroyed it the moment you lied. Every hug, every anniversary dinner, every bedtime story you read to Rose, all of it's contaminated now. He reached for me, but I stepped back like he was on fire. And in a way, he was. A man I had shared a life with, built a future with, had become unrecognizable. Then came the final blow. There's more, he said. And you deserve to know. I froze. More. Julian nodded slowly. His voice dropped. I didn't just hide her. I put money aside for her. From our joint account. Quietly. Over the years. Every cell in my body went cold. You stole from our family? I didn't think of it that way. But it was that way. You took from our daughter. From our future. For a child you had in secret. His voice cracked. She's innocent. I couldn't leave her with nothing. I stepped back again. You made me think I was paranoid all these years. You gaslit me. You lied. And now you want pity? No. I want you to understand I didn't stop loving you. That shattered me more than anything. Because somewhere in my soul, I had prayed he had stopped loving me, that it would at least make sense. But now it was worse. He loved me, and he still did it anyway. I didn't sleep that night. I sat on the floor of Rose's room, holding one of her stuffed animals, staring out the window, trying to understand how the man I chose to build a life with could be capable of something so layered, so calculated. By sunrise, I had made a decision. It wasn't going to be loud. It was going to be surgical, clean, deliberate, and final. I left the house just after noon. Not for good, not yet. Just long enough to think, to breathe, to stop myself from screaming until my throat gave out. I drove aimlessly for a while, windows down, trying to outrun the weight in my chest. But when I returned, the air felt different. Like the house itself had shifted. Julian wasn't home. His car was gone. I knew I had time, and I intended to use it. There was one place I hadn't looked yet, one place he always kept locked. His safe. It was built into the back of our closet, behind a row of winter coats. He claimed it held passports, insurance papers, birth certificates. Boring necessities. But now? Now I had to know what else he considered boring necessities. The code was Rose's birthday. I tried it out of instinct, and the safe clicked open without resistance. Inside were the usual things, a folder labeled, will, our house deed, passports, and then something else. A second phone. An older model. No lock screen. I turned it on. My hands were ice. It opened instantly. The wallpaper was a photo of Maddie and Amelia, arms around each other, smiling at some sunny park. Julian wasn't in the photo, but his presence was all over it. I opened the Messages app. There they were. Hundreds of texts. From this year. From this week. Some were casual, heading over after work, or did Maddie like the jacket? But others. I miss the way things used to be. She's starting to suspect something. We need to be careful. Rose is smart. I think she's picking up on the tension. Can't do this much longer. I stopped breathing. He wasn't just keeping secrets. He was planning a transition. A quiet fade out of our life, so he could step fully into theirs. And then, one message that made the ground drop from beneath me. Claire's not built for confrontation. She'll cry, maybe scream, but she won't leave. Not with Rose. She doesn't have the fight. I set the phone down. Then I picked it back up and opened the photo gallery. The most recent album was labeled WD. My stomach turned. It was a folder of photos from a wedding venue. Julian and Amelia, touring locations. There was a selfie of them under a floral arch, her hand on his chest, planning a life together. While I was still married to him, while I was still making his coffee every morning, I closed the safe, walked out, and for the first time in weeks, my hands didn't shake. They were steady, because now there were no more doubts, no more gray areas. It was over. I wasn't just dealing with a cheater. I was dealing with a man who had written me out of his future while I was still fighting for our past. I called a lawyer that night. I told her everything. She didn't flinch. In fact, she sounded like she'd heard far worse, which only made me feel less alone. We started gathering evidence. Financial records, bank transfers, photos, screenshots, dates. And quietly, carefully, I planned my exit. I didn't scream. I didn't confront him again. Not yet. Because this wasn't about emotion anymore. This was about precision. He had gambled everything on me being too soft to fight. But he forgot one thing. I wasn't just a wife. I was a mother. And I was going to protect my daughter and myself with everything I had. There's a moment when pain stops feeling sharp and starts feeling cold. I had reached that moment. I wasn't crying anymore. I wasn't shaking. I was calculating. Focused. Every part of me moved with quiet intention, like someone who had walked through fire and come out the other side made of steel. I didn't just want to leave Julian. I wanted him to understand what he lost. And I wanted to make sure Amelia, the woman who had helped him shatter my life, saw it happen. So I waited. I waited until the weekend, when I knew exactly where they'd be. Amelia had posted about it 2 weeks earlier, tagging a children's art center in the city. Maddie had a painting class every Saturday morning. Julian had started going with them, like a little family, like we didn't exist. I dressed simply that morning, no makeup, no heels. Just clean, confident, composed. I brought the papers in a navy blue folder. No drama, just truth. When I arrived, the hallway outside the arts center was lined with parents chatting, waiting, sipping coffee. And there he was, Julian, sitting beside Amelia, laughing, their heads leaned in close, like they were just another happy couple, watching their child become an artist. They didn't see me at first, but when I walked up and stood in front of them, Julian's laughter died mid-breath. His face drained of color. Amelia's eyes narrowed. "Claire," she said, trying to sound casual, but failing. "What are you doing here?" I ignored her. I looked at Julian, the man who once promised to protect me, cherish me, grow old with me. Then I pulled the folder from my bag and held it out. "Divorce papers," I said. "Already signed. My lawyer will be in touch about custody and assets. But I thought you'd appreciate receiving them in the presence of the person you wrecked everything for." The silence was deafening. Around us, a few parents paused their conversations. I didn't care. Julian reached for the folder, stunned. "Claire, this isn't—" "No," I interrupted. "You don't get to explain anymore. You had 7 years to come clean. You had hundreds of nights beside me. You had a child who loved you, a wife who trusted you. And you chose this." I turned to Amelia. "You think you won? You think getting him in secret means you'll keep him in the light? Good luck with that. If he can lie to someone for years, he can lie to you, too." She didn't respond. Julian looked like he might crumble right there. And for a moment, I almost pitied him. Almost. But then I remembered that phone. That message. She doesn't have the fight. He was wrong. I had the fight. I just waited until it mattered. The next few weeks were a blur of paperwork, lawyers, and tearful conversations with Rose. I told her as much of the truth as she could handle, enough to explain why Daddy was moving out, why Mommy seemed tired all the time, why everything felt different. She cried. I cried with her. But we moved forward, together. My lawyer was brilliant. She helped freeze the joint accounts before Julian could move more money. We got temporary custody orders in place. The court didn't take kindly to hidden children, secret bank transfers, or double lives. Julian tried to plead with me, privately. He called. He emailed. He even showed up at my mother's house once, where I was staying temporarily. "I made mistakes," he said, "but I never stopped loving you." I looked him in the eyes and said the words I had rehearsed 100 times. "You don't get to say that anymore. Love without honesty is just control. And I'm not yours to control anymore." Then I closed the door in his face. They say betrayal teaches you who people really are. But what they don't tell you is how much it teaches you about yourself. I didn't know I could be this strong. I didn't know I could stand in the storm and not just survive, but rebuild. I'm not the woman I was when this began. I'm something fiercer, something freer. And every time I look at Rose, at the way she watches me, mimics me, trusts me, I remember why I fought. Not for revenge, not even for justice, but for her. So she'd grow up knowing what love should never look like. So she'd know that walking away from betrayal isn't weakness, it's the purest kind of strength.